Russians are currently testing a replacement for their BTR armored personnel carriers, which have been serving with very little changes for like half a century. Even more if we consider that the firepower and protection of a BTR-60 is pretty much the same as BTR-80. This new BTR is apparently named BTR-82A Improved, which doesn't really make much sense since it is almost completely different when compared to the actual BTR-82A. The hull has been completely redesigned and even the turret is different, so the naming makes very little sense to me. I have seen it being called as BTR-22 in some places, but every official information calls it BTR-82A Improved. So what are those changes that I was talking about? Well, BTR-82A, unlike the improved one, has the engine on the back, meaning that the dismounts are placed in the middle of the hull, which in turn means they can't exit on the back. Therefore, they can only dismount from the side doors, one on each side, making them more exposed to enemy fire than on the more conventional designs that have exits on the rear. Well, this improved BTR-82A utilizes a completely different design. Instead of having the engine on the back, it has the engine on the front, to the right of the driver, which means that it can have a rear exit with dismount sitting in the back, which it does. It has armored doors which open on the back with two big steps that fold out when the doors are open. This is a much better design since it offers much better protection for the dismounts and makes it easier to enter and exit the vehicle, as well as evacuate the wounded. Now, ever since the BTR-60, the protection of the BTRs has been pretty much enough for all-around protection against 7.62x54, which would basically protect them against usual small arms fire, including snipers and machine guns, and 50 cal protection on the front. This means that every BTR, including the BTR-82A, would get penetrated by 50 cal to the side, and would also mean that they are very weak to artillery fragments, and they have been penetrated by artillery fragments. This is not something that rarely happens. This is a very common threat for vehicles with this kind of protection. So, the BTR-82A Improved fixes this problem by having a more armored structure. The vehicle now has all-around 12.7mm API protection, which is all-around 50 cal protection, and the front is protected against 23mm AP, which does not penetrate much, but would indicate that the front is better protected than the sides, which is to be expected. Now, this means that the protection against artillery fragments is much better as well. So if this vehicle gets accepted, we should be seeing less of them riddled with holes. On top of improved armor protection, the vehicle has spallliners on the interior, including the sides and the roof, which just adds to the already improved survivability. The firepower is improved with the addition of a thermal imaging system for the gunner, but other than that, it remains relatively the same as on the BTR-82A, which means that it retains the fully stabilized 2A72 30mm autocannon. But the turret can be replaced with the Ballista turret, which incorporates a 30mm 2A42 autocannon and two Concourse M ATGMs, as well as a thermal imaging system. Ballista was made for BTR use in general, so I wouldn't really consider this to be a part of this new BTR. But if they do decide to produce it, having ATGMs on top of an autocannon would be good to deal with enemy armor, since this modernized Concourse ATGM has 800mm of penetration and a range of 4 km. Might not be enough to penetrate the front of modern NBTs, but I'd rather fire this at them than the autocannon. Now, the main reason as to why the BTRs have always had such poor protection has always been that they are amphibious. That has always been a requirement since the early Cold War. Russians loved their vehicles amphibious, so now that the protection has been so drastically improved, is this vehicle amphibious? Well, yes it is. I would be really surprised if it wasn't, considering their utmost obsession with the amphibious vehicles. Even the Boomerang and Kurganets, which are supposed to be the new and better designs, swim, with their protection also being improved. Now, speaking of Boomerang, this vehicle was supposed to be a replacement for the Russian BTRs, but it seems that this cheaper alternative will be picked instead. And to be honest, that's a better idea in my opinion. Boomerang didn't really offer something groundbreaking. Of course, it is better having 30mm frontal protection featuring a CATV, since the crew would be 3 members instead of 2 like on BTR-82A Improved. But still, for mass production, this is definitely a better choice. I've seen some people claim how the BTR-82A is not amphibious, for whatever reason, but every source states that it is, and it has amphibious propulsion placed on the back of the hull on each side, enclosed in armor for protection when not used. But if they could make an even heavier Boomerang amphibious, I don't see why this would be a problem. This also wasn't their first attempt at making something like this. Back in 2017, they presented the BTR-87, which had very similar characteristics to this new vehicle, but it wasn't accepted into service. So we will see what will happen with this one, only time will tell. That would be all for now. If you like my content, you can support me on Patreon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a nice day.